The candidate who wins the presidency will, of course, face a tough battle. Security remains a key issue amid increased threats from the Taliban ahead of NATO's planned withdrawal of its forces at the end of the year. Will Afghanistan's new president provide the country with the much-needed stability? For more analysis on this, I'm joined by Rebecca Zimmerman, a fellow at the Truman National Security Project. And thank you for coming into our studios.
Thanks so much.
By and large, we think that this election was a success in that there was a lot of turnout. Huge amount of people came out, but it was not without violence. We had voters killed, police officers have been killed, election officials. But the Taliban did not launch any major attacks in Kabul and other of the larger areas as promised. Do you believe this was deliberate on their part?
I actually think it's probably more a case of persistent security operations shaping the area around Kabul before the elections. Afghan National Security Forces have been working on this for several weeks prior to the election. We've been getting reports that they've raided houses that have had suspected suicide bombers and things like that. And we know that they've closed down the streets, so Kabul was a ghost town leading up to the election.
There are reports of election fraud in Kandahar and other reports of ballot stuffing. From what you know right now, do you believe that this election was cleaner than the one in 2009?
I think it probably was cleaner than the one in 2009, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be a completely clean election or that the Afghan people will, in the end, decide that this was a legitimate reflection of the will of the people. There have been about 1,200 registered complaints of fraud that the Independent Electoral Complaints Commission will be dealing with in the next few weeks.
Preliminary results are showing that Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah are leading, and that both say that they would sign a bilateral security agreement with the U.S. Do you feel that this is important at this point?
It is. It's very important, and actually that's going to be a lot of what builds up international support for the incoming administration. But we do anticipate, all the frontrunners have said that they'll sign it, so it should happen, hopefully.
Okay, with the expected runoff between these two, what can we expect in terms of security and the lead up to that? Well,
I think probably the biggest risk is that we're likely to have, Dr. Abdullah, who's a Tajik, and Dr. Ghani, who is Pashtun, in a runoff election with each other. That'll mean that we'll really be marshaling a lot of the population on ethnic lines. And there's a serious risk there that you'll have factional fighting, and even that could further mobilize the Taliban to come in and intervene, sort of piggybacking on some of these factional disputes that may happen.
So it could essentially be just a political vacuum for them, the Taliban.
It could be, but both candidates are hopefully going to be able to send word to their proxies to be peaceful. We can hope that that'll be the case.
From what you know right now, the reports of violence, they're horrible. 2 journalists killed this past week. There have been some horrific stories coming out, but do you feel like overall that it was a success?
I think what's clear is it was a success for the Afghan National Security Forces, proving that they can take care of their population on such a momentous occasion, and it was a tremendous success for the Afghan people. There's a photo that has gone viral on the internet showing a man with one finger cut off from voting in the 2009 elections because of Taliban reprisals, with ink on his next finger because he still came out and voted. I mean, that's a huge victory for the Afghan people in the face of insecurity.
Alrighty, Rebecca Zimmerman with the Truman Fellow Project. Thank you so much for coming into our studios.
Thank you.